Hey everyone, welcome back to On the Stand with Ashish Arun. I'm really excited to have Alvin Wolff on the show today. For nearly 40 years, Alvin has been a true force in personal injury law, handling over 7,000 cases and earning a stellar reputation in the process. He's taken more than 100 cases to trial and helped his clients secure millions in damages. But beyond the impressive numbers, Alvin is known for being a compassionate advocate, someone who genuinely cares about the people he represents. Whether it's a catastrophic injury or a complex medical malpractice case, he's seen it all. We are lucky to have him here to share his insights, especially when it comes to working with expert witnesses in personal injury cases. Alvin, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. My pleasure.
So let's begin by asking you to describe how expert witnesses fit into personal injury cases. At what stage do you usually bring them in?
Well, I like to get them early on, particularly for premises cases and medical malpractice cases.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times in a premises case, you may have some special ADA requirements or building code requirements. And I'm not an expert in construction or engineering or architecture, so it's good to have someone take a look at the file. On a malpractice case, particularly in Missouri, you need to have an expert tell you that there was a deviation from the standard of care that was related to the damages sustained by your client. And if you don't have that in Missouri, you can't even file your case or at least have it in court for 60 days before it gets dismissed.
So let's talk about the medical malpractice cases. So would you, when you ask these experts to do the record review, now we are seeing a trend where some attorneys would first have a legal nursing consultant to do an initial review, and then based on their opinion, they would decide if they need to bring a medical expert in. So, do you have an opinion about that?
If you have no idea with what you're doing, it might be a time-consuming or a time-saving economic way to figure it out. What I found with nurses, though, is they are really aggressive in criticizing doctors, and that may be because when they're in practice, they're not allowed to do that as much. But I shy away from that. When I get a lot of these cases, most of these cases are going to depend on 10 pages out of a 6,000 page chart, or it may just be an x-ray. So, right now I'm having one of these AI programs give me a summary of a 6,800 page chart. I don't know if it's going to be worth a darn for me because I'm only dealing with one date that I care about. And this program says they have to give me a whole summary, which may end up being 2,000 pages. So I don't know if that answered your question or not.
No, I mean, it does. So this AI program, and this is something that we are seeing a lot in the market today, like even in the legal tech and like you said, medical chronologies, maybe for deposition summaries as well. We are seeing that a lot of new companies have come out. So have you, and you're saying that you're using this, is this the first time you're using an AI program for a medical chronology or like summarizing a medical
Well,
record?
I've used the medical summary and I really haven't liked it, but I'm giving it another try. I mean, you put in 5,000 pages and you get back 1,000 pages. That's not really good.
Yeah.
The best thing is you go through the chart page by page yourself and you pull out what you need. I mean, in this case, I'm dealing with this lady woke up in the PACU, paralyzed from a neck surgery. And I'm just dealing with really what's going on in the PACU because she was woken up in the operating room. She was fine. The intraoperative films were fine. Something happened between transporting her from the operating room to the PACU. So I'm dealing with a very small part of the records to at least find if there's a deviation from the standard of care.
And a lot of times the expert may not think that there's a deviation from the standard of care. And maybe you would, again, because you've seen so many cases, even though you're not an expert. And that can lead to a dilemma. So would you always take the expert's word, or would you take a second opinion if you have this gut feeling that no, this case actually has merit?
I'm dealing with a guy right now,
Mm-hmm.
and he's telling me there's no case, and I'm coming at him from different angles,
Yeah.
and he keeps shutting me down. But I'm still trying because the lady is so badly hurt. There may not be a case there, but and my feeling is the standard of care in medicine is so low.
Yeah.
The quality of care that's average is so low. You really need something bad like a rusty nail into a healthy heart to say you have a case.
Mm-hmm.
You get into these subtle cases, and there's a lot of gray areas. And when you're in a gray area, chances are pretty good you're not going to win that case.
That makes sense. And so would you believe that an expert should stick to the science and they should not lean towards the attorney's preference towards getting a sign off on the merit of on the certificate of merit?
Well, I've seen guys tell me there's a case,
Mm-hmm.
and I know they're full of shit. Okay. I don't want somebody to tell me I've got a good case when it's a weak case or no case. I
Right.
want a lock solid case that I'm going to win. I hate to lose.
Right.
Uh, I've tried a lot of malpractice cases, and I know the industry average is about 10% plaintiffs' victories.
Yeah.
My record is winning about 50%, which
Oh,
means
wow.
I'm losing 50%.
Yeah.
And it's expensive, and it's depressing, and it costs a lot of money, and it
Mm-hmm.
takes up a lot of time. So the older I get, the less tolerance I have for nonsense.
Yeah.
And, I'm taking less cases.
Mm-hmm. No, I think the less tolerance for nonsense should be something that even younger attorneys should have, especially on the plaintiff's bar. Because again, like you said, there's a lot at stake. You have to invest a lot of money into building the case, fighting the case. And if you don't have a case and you realize it way down the road, then
Yeah,
it's a
but
big loss.
you have to get kicked in the teeth a lot, get knocked down, and get back up
Yeah.
before you learn how to bob and weave.
Yeah. That's.
When I was younger,
Mhm.
I had some very lucky experiences. Like I tried a case where a lady got a form in the mail saying she had a brain tumor and she didn't, and she hung herself.
Mhm.
And I tried that case and got a verdict. Um, I think today, if that case came in, I probably wouldn't have taken it.
Yeah.
I took it to a seminar where they told me there was no way I was going to win that case.
Oh, wow.
So when you're younger, and I won't say stupid, but when you're younger and inexperienced,
Mhm.
you're going to take chances that a person with more experience may not take.
Yeah. So, how do you go about selecting these experts? Like, I know there's a lot of word of mouth recommendations from colleagues who have worked with somebody. But other than that, like, would you look at their past records? Like, how do you decide which expert is a good fit for your case?
I'll try a literature search
Mm-hmm.
where who's written the articles in the area that I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
Um, there are um, a lot of doctors that I know that I'm friendly with from different organizations
Mm-hmm.
that will review a file for me. And I'll ask them, if you don't want to get involved because it's a local case, do you have a colleague that'll help?
Yeah.
I shy away from services
Mm-hmm.
unless, to me, using an expert service is like going with a get out of jail free card. You just can't find one on your own. And some of these companies have some pretty good experts,
Yeah.
and some of them just have people that are going to take your money. So you got to be careful about that.
Mm-hmm. And has there been a time when you've had like difficulty finding the right expert?
Yeah, when there's no case.
Like what I meant was like maybe the specialty was very unique and there weren't many experts, or you couldn't find somebody who was willing to opine on the matter.
Well, I had a case once where a lady came in with a 1 in a million presentation,
Mm-hmm.
and I found an expert, and we tried the case. And while the jury was out, we got an offer. The client told me not to take the offer. The jury then buzzed and asked for 3 liability exhibits.
Hmm.
They buzzed with a verdict in 5 minutes. And I told the client, you lost the case. Take the money if it's still there. So he took the money and it worked out.
Wow. It's interesting. Again, I mean, there's no substitute for experience. Like, once you've seen, so only then you can take calls like these. Can you pick like a unique expert or an unexpected expert, like that you had to consult, given the range of cases you've handled, from motor vehicle accidents to premises liability? Like somebody
Well,
unique, somebody very different.
whether it's neurology or anesthesia
Yeah.
or engineering or architecture or ADA,
Mm-hmm.
I did have an interesting case involving one of these gas stations that have what do you call it? Convenience stores. And I had a lady that fell down some steps that didn't have a handrail down the middle, but there was a handrail on both sides of the steps.
Oh, wow.
I got an expert who said there's an ADA violation here.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to put the case together. And, despite my client being maybe too lazy to use the handrail on either side,
Yeah.
she fell down the steps and ended up having her foot amputated. And we got her a nice result.
Mm-hmm.
Another one that comes to mind is a dog bite case
Okay. Interesting.
where this lady came to me with a clawed hand, and I did some digging, and I found out that the dog had bitten the lady's grandchildren, bit the gardener, bit the owner, and the vet record said I warned her of legal implications and said that the dog would bite again. So I had a dog behaviorist, a
Mm-hmm.
nice lady that I got out of Minnesota, or maybe it was Wisconsin, and she taught me a phrase that I've never forgotten. When they say the dog nips someone, and she taught me that a nip is a bite that no one wants to admit.
Yeah. So, what kind of qualities do you like look for in an expert witness when you're retaining them?
Okay, one, they're not going to rip you off.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fair enough.
Two, they're going to be responsive and get back to you.
Mm-hmm.
3, they're going to learn the file. 4, they're not going to screw around and play games. I mean, I can think of one guy
Okay.
who was a pediatric neurologist very early in my career, and his deal was, you have a brain damaged child, and he'd tell you got a great case, and you'd get $10,000 into him, and it was time for him to give a deposition. He'd say, "I'm not going to do that. Your kid was retarded to begin with." So, you get into someone like that, it really leaves a bad taste in your mouth, and you really never forget something like that.
Yeah, that's horrible. I mean, I have seen reports of attorneys who have reached out to us saying that we are unable to contact this expert, and we worked with the expert in the past, and for some reason now the phone number that we had, nobody's answering, and we are unable to reach the expert. So that is, I completely agree, that is a problem that we keep seeing in the industry, and that is something that experts really should address and be more available and more responsive. Pricing, I again agree that some experts can be very, very expensive, and not all cases and not all attorneys would have that kind of budget. But yeah, I mean, the third one that you pointed out, I mean, playing games and refusing to testify later in the case, that's the first time I've heard. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't put it past people to do that.
I mean, what I've found is the better the doctor's credentials,
Mm-hmm.
the more, and if he's got the time, the more reasonable his fees are going to be,
Okay.
and the more accessible he is.
Mm-hmm.
The worse the doctor's credentials, the more they're going to charge you, and the more you're going to be waking up at night saying, "Why am I working with this person?"
So let's flip that and ask you if you have, like any memories or anecdotes of an expert you really loved working with, who was like a great and outstanding expert?
Oh yeah. There's a guy out in California who's a knee doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, One of the best doctors I've ever seen. I've worked with him on a compartment syndrome case. I'm working with him now on a hip surgery case, and he comes in prepared, and he's accessible, and he returns your calls. He answers his phone. He responds to emails, and he's just great. Um, and I'm dealing with a guy right now. At an Ivy League school who's told me there's no case, but I keep going after him with other ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And this morning I wrote him and said, I know I'm being a pest, but, and he gets back to me. And I respect that. He says, you still don't have a case, but nice try.
Okay.
And, I'm not going to give up right now, but I
Mm-hmm.
might later.
And have you ever in these cases like decided to go to some other expert and see if they have a favorable opinion? Like, what's your take on that? Is that a safe practice or it's risky?
Well, if you have a good expert that tells you there's no case, that means for every expert I'm going to find that says there is a case, the other side is going to find 10 that tells me I have no case.
Yeah.
So, what my rule of thumb is, unless I think the doctor is really, really off,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't think that very often, but I will go back to the client and say, look, I put up, $5,000, $10,000. You want another review, you're going to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
And tell them there's no crying in baseball if there's no case.
Have you ever fired an expert after retaining them?
Yeah, I have.
And if you don't mind sharing why, like what happened there, what led you to do that?
I thought their methodology was not correct.
Mm-hmm.
I found out that they didn't have the right credentials. I mean, I had an expert in a ladder case that I didn't think was going to get past a Daubert challenge, so I had to part company with them.
So, as an attorney, do you also help your experts prepare for deposition or trial?
Well, to a certain extent, yeah. And the other thing is, you never want to put any of this in writing
Yeah.
because your emails are discoverable once
Mm-hmm.
you've disclosed your expert. But you really have to make sure the expert knows the file, understands the theory, and it's a give and take because the expert hopefully will be teaching me the medicine or teach me the standard of care for whatever discipline
Mm-hmm.
there is.
And then have you also found experts who like may or may not be aware of the Daubert standard that applies to expert testimony or the state standard for experts admissibility? And then like, do you worry about that and ask them these questions and make sure that they are familiar with the standards of expert
Yeah,
witness testimony?
and the time that that's occurred, it's been my fault. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if a guy um, gives me his resume on a products case and I see he really has never worked on designing something that we're dealing with, and he doesn't have very good methodology or he did poor testing, I mean, that's going to be on me.
I was talking to an expert the other day, and he said that he met with an attorney who wanted to write the report for him. And the attorney said that I'll give you the report. I just need you to go through it quickly and sign off on it. Now, what's your advice to these attorneys who want to do something like that and control the expert and write the report themselves?
Well, if the expert can back it up, I mean, you have to have the right buzzwords in there.
Mm-hmm.
That the doctor failed to comport with that standard of skill, care, and learning ordinarily exercised by members in the community,
Mm-hmm.
and that caused or contributed to cause the plaintiff's injury. Um, it happens all the time. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I've had experts ask me to write the report,
Okay.
and they'll look at it and they'll add to it or they'll take away from it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see anything wrong with submitting a report to someone and say, look, if you think this is good and this is your opinion, fine. I mean, these people, they're all busy.
Yeah.
You know, a client will come to me with a contract claim, and I'll say, write me the letter that you want me to send, and I'll put it on my letterhead. I'll make changes to it,
Yeah.
change the grammar, make the terminology correct, but I don't have a problem with that.
No, I mean, the reason I asked that was we're also seeing a lot of AI tools that are now helping attorneys draft documents. And by extrapolation, people are also talking about experts using AI and probably using it to draft their reports. At least, like get some help from AI, and then again, like you said, review the output and then sign off on it. So, and at the same time, a lot of state bar associations and some judges have been asking attorneys to disclose any use of artificial intelligence to their clients. Or if they're submitting a brief, they want certifications that no AI was used, or if AI was used, they have, like made sure that they have taken all the precautions. So, would you be comfortable if an expert you have retained uses an AI tool to draft their report?
I would be as comfortable with that as putting my balls underneath a hammer that's coming down very hard. I would not want that to happen at all.
Okay.
The AI program I have does not have law attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll use it for, okay, I've got a deposition for this kind of case. And it'll give me 20 questions
Yeah.
that will give me a springboard to just start thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen or heard of examples where lawyers are tendering work product to the court with cases that don't exist.
Yeah.
I think you found me on LinkedIn with some of the stuff I've been writing.
Mm-hmm.
It always asks me for AI
Yeah.
to sanitize what I write, but then it's not me, and I don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're lazy, it's great. I'm lazy for a lot of things, but not about that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. No, I mean, yeah, that makes sense. And I think the AI tools are, again, like they're not there yet that you can like blindly rely on them. And maybe in the future they'll get better, they'll hallucinate less, and we'll all be more comfortable using them in our day to day. And like you said, would you advise experts to do the same? Upload the opposing expert's deposition and ask 20 questions, or upload their own expert report and ask the AI that how, like what 20 questions can you ask me based on this report that I've written?
I would rather my expert give me the 20 questions to ask.
Okay.
And, for like a premises case, it'll be something like, client falls on black ice, breaks knee. I'm taking the corporate representative, what question should I ask? And it'll have 5 different areas with 4 or 5 questions in each. And then that just it gets me thinking,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't end my inquiry as to what I need to get.
Mm-hmm.
It's simplistic and it's useful, but it's not the end game.
Right. Let's talk a little about opposing experts now. And so you told me about your playbook on how you go about retaining experts. What's your playbook on challenging the opposing experts?
Look at what they've written, look at old depositions,
Mm-hmm.
use a company called Expert Witness Profiler, which will give you a database on everything they can find on the expert.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just have to see, do they answer your question?
Yeah.
Or do they answer the question they wish you would have asked them?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you going to be too nice of a person and let them walk all over you? Yeah. It's pretty easy to tell if an expert is full of shit,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also easy to tell if the expert really knows his stuff and you're in trouble.
And how important is a past Daubert exclusion for you to, like, when it comes to the retaining, like when you're looking to retain an expert and you get to know that this expert has been excluded in the past, just that very fact, will that stop you from retaining that expert?
Well, I had an opposing expert in a motor vehicle collision who'd been excluded like 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
And we hit him really hard in his deposition, and they didn't call him at trial.
Oh, okay.
We didn't even get to Daubert.
Mm-hmm.
I was praying that we're going to bring him in because I think they would have enhanced my verdict.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. And usually, in your experience, what are the most common grounds on which experts get excluded? Because I mean, I would assume that it's not qualification because most attorneys would hire qualified experts.
Well, in a medical case, it's pretty easy
Mm-hmm.
for the expert to testify if he's got skill, um, knows the subject from his experience. They're going to get in. Uh, I don't do a lot of products cases, but the cases I've done, that's where you're going to see a Daubert challenge. And that's really, I have a very limited uh, knowledge database about that.
Okay.
I'm always looking to see if these guys have been challenged, but usually it's going to be an engineer or something along those lines.
And do you have any advice for experts on like probably being found by attorneys, or like how they can help attorneys work with them better?
My advice for an expert is make sure the lawyer you're working with is going to pay you.
Okay.
Be fair with them, but don't do the work thinking you're going to get paid right away, because I've had friends who are experts have me go to lawyers saying, hey, they did the work. Why don't you pay them? Particularly if the lawyer loses.
Mm-hmm.
And, once the lawyer's lost the case and he's on to the next case, there's a pretty good chance he's going to forget to pay his expert.
Mm-hmm.
So, my wife does expert work, and I tell her, get paid up front or don't show up unless you know the person and they have a good reputation.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of lawyers out there that just don't pay anybody. They don't pay their court reporters. They don't pay providers, and there's in any business there's a lot of dishonest people out there.
So, no, I think that's great advice, and we see a lot of experts. Like, they'll post online on LinkedIn about it, or even in these private forums that we are part of. Expert would ask, "Okay, this attorney is not paying me. What do I do?" And really, it's very difficult to chase after an attorney to pay you once the case is closed. So I think that's excellent advice, and every expert would really benefit. They should make sure that they're getting paid upfront. But a lot of times, what's your take on third-party referral agencies that would place experts and they handle the case management and the billing?
I done that very, very infrequently. I don't like it.
Mhm.
I don't want a third party between the expert and me.
Yeah.
I just, there, there's people out there that don't want to do the work to find their own experts.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also experts out there that don't practice their discipline anymore, and they're just experts, professional experts.
Right. A lot of experts don't even make it easy for you to find them, like especially in the medical discipline. You wouldn't know if somebody isn't like does expert witness work. So, so other than the upcharge that a referral agency would add when they provide an expert, like are there any other issues you see? Like is it like lack of communication or like any other
You know,
problems you see with that
I,
model?
I think a busy, successful medical doctor
Mm-hmm.
really doesn't want to do expert work,
Yeah.
but the good ones feel like they have a duty to the profession
Yeah.
to weed out incompetency,
Mm-hmm.
really bad medical care. And by the same token, they have a duty to be the gatekeeper. If there is no case, I want to know that early. I don't want to say, oh, this is a great case, and then get down the road and take a dozen depositions and spend a lot of money and then find out there's no case.
Right.
I'd rather be playing golf.
That makes sense. That's always a better option. And Can you remember a case where it really pivoted on the expert's testimony? Like it really depended on it?
Yeah.
And can you like share some examples?
Yeah. I was trying a case where a Jehovah's Witness refused blood on a laparoscopic cholecystectomy case, which is gallbladder surgery.
Mm-hmm.
The doctor hit the patient's aorta. She refused blood and she bled to death.
Mm-hmm.
So the patient had signed a document saying that she would accept cell saver, where they take the blood, they wash it, they give it back to you. The defendant doctor was endorsed as his own expert. He didn't read the document saying she should accept cell saver blood. He took the blood and threw it in the dump bucket. He talked about how he was such a well-trained, good expert, which opened the door for me to show the jury that he cut 3 other aortas during the same procedure. So it's kind of an opposite situation where the opposing expert defendant shot himself in the foot, which allowed me to get in the prior bad acts, which drove the verdict.
And just the way you would take the defense expert apart, if your expert is getting hammered at deposition or at trial, how would you usually tackle a situation like that?
Just sit there with a smile on my face, say, "Please, sir, may I have another?" There's, when your expert gets hammered, you just, have to clean it up the best you can.
Yeah. So do you think maybe a mock deposition before the actual deposition is helpful? Do you conduct something like that?
I do briefly. Not a whole lot. I could probably do a much better job with that.
And have you ever had an expert come and ask you that I really need help to prepare for this deposition?
Sure. Experts that are doing their first time. I mean, on their maiden voyage, I love that because they really can't get impeached for being a streetwalker full of makeup and lipstick.
So do you have a preference for people who have not done expert witness work before?
I love it when they've never done it before. I think it's great.
But then aren't you worried? But aren't you worried about the lack of experience, the lack of understanding of the legal system, the lack of maybe the nerves that it takes to withstand deposition and cross?
If I have to, I'm a very good hand holder.
Okay.
If they need a baby bottle, I will warm up the formula and give it to them.
And how would you then go about, again, like finding somebody who's never done expert witness work and convince them to do expert witness work?
Well, a lot of times they're a treating doctor.
Okay.
In a motor vehicle collision case, you go to the trauma surgeon. I mean, I was the guy's first deposition. I'm going to be his second deposition. And, it's a little bit different than a medical negligence case. But, someone needs to do it for the first time, and it may as well be me training them.
So do you have any advice for young attorneys? Like I asked you for advice for experts and you had some great advice there. So what advice would you have for young attorneys who are just beginning to work with expert witnesses in their cases?
Have a mentor and see how they do it. When I was young, I was going to different seminars around the country. I was watching Jerry Spence, Racehorse Haynes, Joe Jamail, Melvin Belli. I'd see the greatest lawyers that St. Louis had to offer. I'd watch them try cases. Because when you're just starting out, well, I hung my own shingle. I didn't really have a job. So you have the time because you don't have that much work to do. So you just have to go around and see what other people are doing. Develop your own style. You can steal someone's material, but it's like a comedian. You ever saw the movie The Aristocrats? They all tell the same joke, but they all put their own style on it, and it's very effective, but it just takes a while to develop.
Mm-hmm.
There's depending on, DRI, AAJ,
Mm-hmm.
Trial by Human, Trial Lawyers University. Everybody's got a CLE today.
Yeah.
If you need your hours, go. Take workshops, take acting classes, do whatever you think you need to do. I was doing some stand-up comedian work for a while.
Oh, wow.
Telling dirty jokes.
Mm-hmm. And I can see how that would actually help somebody become a better trial lawyer, because you're again working with the audience, you're working with the jury. But what's your take on it? Like, do you think that helped?
Yeah. I mean, you know what? It was fun.
Uh-huh.
And it gave me an opportunity to get up and do some public speaking.
Yeah.
With it, it's not so serious.
Mm-hmm. No, and yeah, I mean, I know of an expert who has been doing expert witness work for a good 40-45 years, and now he coaches new experts on testifying. And he has a partner who used to be a Broadway actor. So they bring in the whole acting and the testifying angle to it, and I can see, like you are reaffirming the position that they're taking. So that makes perfect sense.
You still have to be yourself when you do this stuff. If you go and try to be someone you're not, you're going to fail.
I think that's the fine line between being a good comedian and a miserable one.
You have to have good material.
Yeah. So any last anecdotes or words you'd want to leave the audience with today?
It's a good profession.
Mm-hmm.
Be honest. Charge reasonable prices. Don't overreach.
Mm-hmm.
And do your homework.
Perfect. So, Alvin, if people want to find you and some for a case or some advice, where can they find you? How can they reach you?
Alvin Wolff, WLFF @gmail.com.
Okay. And you're also very active on LinkedIn. So, is that a good place to catch you too?
Sure. So I wrote this book 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And called 40 Lessons in 40 Years. It's been expanded.
Oh,
and I'm just throwing it out on LinkedIn. It's helping me edit it when I put things out there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all real life stuff rather than, touchy-feely. Oh, I wake up in the morning and I think about my family and how great life is and
mm-hmm.
the duty I have to my clients. I'm just talking about normal stuff that I did. I'm not into this touchy-feely bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I should be, but I'm leaving that to the younger lawyers.
I'm not really sure how I feel about that, but yeah, I'm with you on that. I think it makes more sense to, be yourself and share your real stories. And yeah, rather than the things that we keep seeing on social media these days. So I'm completely with you on that. So thank you so much for your time, Alvin. And I really hope to stay in touch, and hopefully we'll do this again sometime.
That'd be awesome.
Thanks a lot, Alvin. Have a good one.
Thanks, Ashish.
We'll stay in touch. Yeah. If you found this podcast useful, remember to subscribe and give us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. This will help other users find this podcast and benefit from the insights shared by our guests. If you'd like to be featured as a guest on this show, please write to media@xlightum.com. See you in the next episode.